Rolled in on a flatbed, wheels hanging low, dust-covered dreams from decades ago. Chrome all fade, paint long gone, but under that rust was a heart holding on. They said she's a basket case, but I saw more, a whisper of Le Mans and old concours lore. So I left her with the masters, wrenches in hand, in a shop where legends are born from the sand. Now she's a showstopper, center stage glow, Pebble Beach shine with that old school soul. Frame off magic, panel gap tight, every bolt torque just right by the midnight light. It takes more than money, it takes heart and pride to bring steel and soul back to life.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I am trying something new. I am doing some fun cartoons, car-related songs using AI, and I would like to do one for every podcast as well as every day. So if you go to my YouTube channel, the Collector Car Podcast, and hit the Octane FM playlist, you will hear not only this song in its entirety, but you'll hear a lot of other really cool songs. And so let's get on with Jack here in a second. But then stay until the end of the podcast and you'll hear this complete song. So let's find out what Jack's got going on at his restoration shop. RM Sotheby's is the world's largest collector car auction house by total sales. They are the preeminent market maker of high-quality collector cars and collections, regardless of size or complexity. By working in partnership with the Sotheby's team and its network of 80 offices in 40 countries, RM Sotheby's has established the largest client network of any collector car auction house in the world. Join the RM Sotheby's family by connecting with one of their car specialists at rmsotheby's.com or contact me directly at gstanley@rmsotheby's.com. All right, welcome to the Collector Car Podcast. This is going to be another fun one because we're talking to someone who's an expert in the business that restores cars to a very, very high level and is doing some unique, fun things that I have. It's kind of a new wave going on here right now. So I'd like to welcome Jack Farland. Jack, how you doing today?
Good, Greg. Good to be with you.
Yeah, we met down at Moto Miami, common friend Roger Wilbanks, and hanging out after the big show. What did you think of Moto Miami?
We had so much fun. We've been to Pebble Beach for years, and we've been to Amelia Island every year, really, since 2009.
Wow.
And, been to the Quail. We've been to all kinds of shows around the country, and we just loved Moto Miami. It had a young vibe. There was a lot of young people, super interested, and we think that's the future, obviously, of our hobby. So it was great to see those younger, guys attending. And I talked to a guy that I met, literally, he requested information on our website, and I got talking to him, and he lives right there. And he happened to be out of town for the weekend. He was so bummed. And he's a bit younger, and he's got some cars. And he said, "Oh, I'm going next year. Don't worry." He was all excited about it.
Yeah, it's by far the youngest crowd I've ever been with in a concours kind of event. It's not a concours, but that type of event. I think the Quail would probably be the closest, but man, there was a lot of, price point keeps a lot of the young kids out of the Quail for sure.
Right.
So was that your first time at Moto or your second?
That was my first time. I found out about it from a carrier, a truck driver that we've used to shake our cars to Pebble in different places. He's got a 18-wheeler and he hauls stuff for us. And he stopped by one day. He said, "You want to take cars to Moto Miami?" I said, "I haven't even really heard of it." And he said, he started telling me how much fun they had last year. So we just up and booked tickets and decided to go on his recommendation. And we're so glad we did. We brought a customer with us and he had a blast. And he's been to the Quail and all over. And he just thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, so it's cool. I mean, it's nice because it's all self-contained, right? There's a ton of stuff. You don't actually ever have to leave the property for the entire weekend. You've got the auction, you got the show, you got, other events. But if you want to leave, obviously there's a ton of stuff to do in Miami. So
it's close. You're 4 miles in a radius or 4 to 5 miles from so much stuff. You can be right on the downtown area. You can be over in where we were by Cocoa Beach. There's all kinds of great restaurants. So it's a really good location. loved that you didn't have to leave. You know,
Yeah.
that
Well, and
was
this podcast is not about Moda. I just
yeah,
thought I'd
I
bring it
know.
up since
Well,
that's where we
we
met.
just had a blast. That's all.
Yeah.
We've been to a bunch of them, so it was
Yeah.
great.
Oh, that's great. Great feedback. So tell us a little bit about your restoration shop. And I know one of the reasons why I thought I was jumping on your website here, and your website, let's make sure I get this correct here, is farlandcars.com. It's Farland Classic Restoration, correct?
Yes, that's right.
I was jumping on your website. Obviously, I want to talk about the restoration process a little bit and what it takes to take a car to, your local car show, but then what does it take to take it to Pebble Beach? Obviously there's two different levels there, or multiple levels, but then also I know you're doing the electrification of classic cars a little bit. So why don't we talk about that first? Tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about what you're seeing demand wise for electric cars. Is this being forced down people's throats? Are you getting people asking, hey, I want a classic car, but I want it to be green? Or is it people that just want an alternative power plant and they just want something different? What's driving it?
That's a good question. We're in Colorado, so we have, Denver and Boulder, those areas are, very green oriented. People are they buy a lot of electric cars, a lot of young people that are into the, whole environmental thing. Colorado's a pretty environmentally conscious state. We have the beautiful mountains, people like to keep it nice. So it's just, an overall consciousness in Colorado. 2013, I bought or I leased a Chevy Volt. They came out 2013, and I was looking for something interesting to drive, and I liked the looks of that little car. And leased one, and oh my gosh, it just ruined me. It tore me up. I love the way the electric drive unit worked because I have a house up 30 miles southwest of Denver near Conifer, and that's up a hill, 20 some miles. And I liked how the car went up the hill. It didn't strain, and coming down, it would charge itself. So I averaged 59 miles to the gallon with that car over 2 years, which I thought
Mm,
was pretty good because I've driven cars that got 10 miles to the gallon. And we create kind of a dinosaur-sized carbon footprint in our business with Hemi engines and, all the
right.
crazy stuff we build. So we thought, well, it couldn't hurt to, look into this. One thing led to another, and then I heard about a guy in California that gave classes on converting cars to electric. And I went out and took his class, and it was a 2 day, 2 or 3 day class, and morning till late afternoon. And you take apart a dune buggy and you pull the gas engine out, and then you put an electric motor in and wire it up and so forth, and put the battery box together. And basically, it was a basic learning experience, very basic. But then by the time we were done, we drove this thing around. And it was pretty impressed. I was impressed how simple process could be potentially. And so we said, well, let's do this. We went out and we bought a Porsche 912 out of Boulder. We found some 912 that had been in a garage for, I think, 15 years with a blown motor, had a bad cylinder. So we took it down to the shop. We bought it at a reasonable price and thought, well, we'll just convert this one. So first thing we did is start to restore it. Well, needless to say, and I know you know about restoration, that turned into $200,000 in a pretty, we put
Right.
new floors, new fenders, new interior. We made quite a car out of it. And then we put the electric drive system in it, had a 5 speed, and it was super fast. The little thing ripped. But we learned a lot. It was an engineering experience. We had to, make bracketry and mount things, and it was great. And
So you did that one just as your own chance to experiment with this new
yeah,
technology in a classic car, correct?
kind of a prototype. We knew we'd sell it at the end of the day, which we did. We
Did
sold
you
it.
get your 200 and something thousand dollars back
We
out of
were a
it?
little short, but we got like 145,000 for it.
Wow.
If you know
Nice.
what those cars are worth, that was a very respectable amount of money for that car.
Yeah.
So you can imagine how nice it was. It was really nice. It was laser straight, painted silver with a red leather and plaid interior and, all kinds of cool aluminum aftermarket stuff. It was a neat car. And the
So
guy that bought it lives in Boulder and he has two little kids and they haul him around in the back seat and he drives it every day when it's nice.
So I'm looking on your website, and I show 5 cars that you've electrified. There is a 912, but it looks like it's black and not silver. So you've done 2 912s?
The 912, we've done cars for a company down in Texas called Moment Motors, and they've been converting to electric for a few years as well, but they don't do restoration. So they've
Hmm.
sent us 3 projects. That black one was one of them, and we did all of the conversion on the body and the interior, and then we made some metal modifications for those guys to their specifications for the mounting of the motor and the battery box. And then we sent the car to them and they actually put the electric drive system in it. And that one, they put a Tesla motor in. And the other one we did in the shop was a 67 Mustang. We just finished that a few months ago. That one,
Yeah, I'm a Mustang guy, so I'm looking at that 67 Mustang. Was that originally a 6-cylinder car, a V8 car?
that was a V8 289. Pretty
Okay.
nice little car. It was, we bought it from a company back in Ohio who purchased it from the original owner. So it was an unrusted, pretty much unmolested car with a beautiful interior. And other than the carpet and the headliner, we were able to keep the seats and so forth in the interior. So the interior is, largely original and really nice. But the customer wanted it a little bit darker blue. What they call it was a little bit lighter blue, Mexico blue. They had a name for that color, Acapulco blue, something.
Acapulco blue, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I noticed also an Alfa Romeo 911 and then a pickup truck. Were those also ones you converted?
We did the pickup truck was done by one of our managers. That was a car that he'd worked on himself. And then the Alfa Romeo is one of the ones from down in Texas that the guys are doing. And we're just finishing a custom leather interior on that car. We painted it. We've done everything on that car, bottom, top, floors. We put an electric seat in it for him, so we had to make a seat. We went to a salvage yard and got some Corvette seats that were electric and took the bottom and mated it to the top of the Alfa Romeo seat because the customer's wife's a little shorter. So we had to make the seat go up and down. Very high-end leather in that car. And man, it's one to follow. It's going to be so beautiful when it's done.
So
Um,
when you get a request for electrification, that's not a hybrid, it's 100% electric. So you're taking like a Tesla
right.
motor with battery packs. I would assume like in the Mustang, the motor's in the front, the batteries are in the trunk. Is that how it worked out on that example?
Yes, what they do on a smaller car, like the Porsche we did, the battery was in the front and it weighted the front differently. So we had to modify the suspension a little bit because those cars are light in the front. And when we were done, we had more of a 55% in the rear and a little bit less in the front, right? So it was more balanced and it handled differently. It handled really well, actually, because the front would bite when you turned a corner. The rear could get a little light because it had so much power. So you had to be real careful not to you could literally power through corners and light those tires up. But that was an interesting car to drive. And the little Alfa Romeo will probably have a battery box in the back and also in the front. So they'll keep the weight very balanced. And that's what we did with the Mustang. We put a battery box in the front, right behind where the radiator would go. And then the power equipment and the motor was down below where the transmission was, basically just in front of where the tranny would sit. And then we had another battery box mounted in the trunk. It actually sat fairly low, so we had almost a full trunk. We took the gas tank out and we sunk that battery box down. And I'd say it stuck up about 5 inches from where the, gas tank would have been. So we ended up still, you could throw a set of clubs in the trunk of that car, drive it
Yeah,
somewhere.
it seems like we're in the initial stages of figuring out how do we, electrify these classic cars while still trying to maintain what they are supposed to drive like. Like the 911 is probably the hardest one, but I got to imagine at some point someone brilliant will come up with a way. You know what? Let's not do all this. Let's just, just replace your rear end drive. Your rear end. So the engine's where your gearing would be and powers the rear wheels. Call it a day. I think there should be easier ways to do it as the technology, because I've seen, some of these motors are on each wheel.
Yeah,
So it seems like,
crazy.
yeah, as we go forward, it seems like it would be less intrusive more bolt-on to be able to do this. I mean, would you agree with that based on how the technology is going?
I would. You're right. I mean, you're totally right, and that's how the whole thing is going. They make a drive system now. One of the companies we work with makes a Tesla-oriented drive system that basically bolts up to the back. You don't have to change anything about the suspension. It bolts right up to where the old system went. The only thing you need is smaller stub axles to go out to the wheels. And then you mount a battery box in the area above the motor and in the front trunk. And you actually maintain the exact same original Porsche weight, the same split.
Yeah, you
And
pull
the
out
car drives just, it handles just the same, except with, well, 600 horsepower. It's kind of
yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah. So how often are you getting requests to electrify a classic car right now, or is it still kind of one-off kind of situations?
You know, it's a little bit in its infancy. We get requests a lot, but when they hear how much it costs, that slows a lot of them down because they think that you can do this for $20,000. Well, a basic drive system, the motors, the batteries, the controllers, the wires, all the junk you need, that stuff starts about 50,000, so
Wow.
50 to 70 is what it's going to cost for your hardware. And then you've got how custom do you want it from there? But it's a thing. At SEMA this year, they did
There's a lot of them. Yeah.
oh yeah, there was a bunch, but a guy worked on a Ferrari Dino. I don't know if you saw it, but if you pull up
Yeah.
that electric Dino, I stood next to that car and I was just awed. They did an amazing job. I ended up talking to the engineer that built it. He applied he was interested in a position and he explained what he did. I was amazed. Beautiful work. And the car should drive really nice. It had very nice weight balance. They kept the shifter in it, but they put a very sophisticated interior in it with lighting and all kinds of stuff. Now, some
Yeah, it
people
was
would think
pretty wild.
it's sacrilegious, but man, it was cool. And people loved it at SEMA. They went crazy.
Well, if I still have a picture of it, I will throw it on here so people can see it because it was really, really wild. I did take a bunch of pictures of it at the time. So, all
Yeah.
right. Well, let's get away from electrification of classic cars.
That's
Let's
an
talk
easy
about
plug.
restoration work. So, as you and I both know, you probably have a long wait. I think you guys are in demand, and the workforce is thin. I think as far as getting labor and the skilled technicians needed to not only paint a car but do upholstery. How is it where you are in keeping your everybody fully staffed and having these projects go on? Do you find it to be difficult, or are you pretty good shape?
It's a challenge all the time. So we started our business 34 years ago, basically in the same area we are on the same street. And we started as a high-end detail shop. And we worked up from there into restoration over a few years because we kept getting more and more involved with the detail. We would clean up engine compartments and take things apart and repaint them and put them back together. We'd get a lot of cars in where guys would have the outside painted and forget about the interior or the engine compartment. And pretty soon we realized, we're really doing restoration work. So then we hired our first technician and then another one. And then we outgrew that, 4,000 square feet we were in. And we had a chance to acquire a property up the street. So we sold our little building, bought another one, and now we have a 15,000 square foot main facility with a 5,000 square foot showroom down the block and another, little 1,500 feet across the street where we do the dusty body work. So we have a much bigger facility and we have about 20 staff, but keeping those staff and hiring qualified people is super tough today. It's very competitive. The salaries are very high. Consequently, the rates, are high. And yeah, we do have people waiting to get in for sure. We do mechanical work, so we have some work that moves through quickly, and but our body work and upholstery, we move that through fairly fast, but it still takes time. Restoration is not instantaneous. And we get maybe 30% of our projects are cars that aren't finished. We get them from other shops, people that happens. I know you're nodding your head. You've probably seen that happen.
So
Uh,
many times fixing someone else's
yeah,
work.
yeah.
So what is it like? So let's say your customer comes in, and I'll pick one of your current projects here. Let's see, you got a cool bunch of cool stuff. Let's call it the Mercedes 190 SL. I know that's a little bit more of a difficult car to restore, I believe, just because of the way that's, constructed. But when you sit down with them and they say they want a Concours restoration, how does that conversation go? Do you ask them to define that first? Like, how does
Yeah,
that whole thing go? Because I know you've got to set the right expectations. If you're asking for when the local car show is one thing, when Pebble Beach is a totally different thing. So walk us through your conversation with your potential client.
we call it counseling because
Counseling.
some of them need counseling. They have these ideas in their head, but they have no concept what it's going to cost. And we have to tell them, okay, now this car, the way you want it, it's going to start at $250,000 to restore, and it may go up well above that, depending on how much rust we find and how many broken things are in there. And, there's variables in this that you just don't know about till you get quite deep. And so we try to really give them a pretty good idea going in what it's going to cost. And if they're okay with that, then we move forward. We discourage people from restoring cars that don't have any intrinsic value. If somebody
Mm.
brings us a car that's, top of the line, you can go buy one for 50,000. We won't let them spend 200,000 restoring it. I mean, we've made a few exceptions to that where it's some family that, you know, they bought the car new, it was their grandfather's car, and they just won't sit still for not doing it. We've done a couple of those, but the cars are going to stay in the family. They're going to, go down to the grandkids, and
At
that's
that point, money's not an object. It's
it's
getting it
not
done,
really the
right?
issue. Yeah,
Would
that's
that
not
be the 68 Plymouth Barracuda on your website or like the Maserati Bora? Because those aren't worth $200,000 or 250 or whatever.
right, right. Yeah, we did a Barracuda for some people that we did a maroon one a few years ago that we just made 100-point car out of. The people were insistent upon doing it. They knew it wasn't worth it. They understood. Girl that owned the car, her father gave it to her when she was 16. So she was about 60. And he bought it from a junkyard for $30 and fixed it up and gave it to her. And she managed to keep it her whole life. And then they, made good money. They both worked and had a lot of money and wanted the car to be brand new. So they finished the car, they bought a trailer for it, and they've really had a lot of fun taking it to car shows and whatnot because that's a car you see very rarely in nice condition, that particular model. So they've had a blast with it.
So when you make out that first quote, is that, Pebble Beach quote, or is that like, a lot of folks, they just want to repaint. They don't necessarily need to have everything exactly factory correct. They don't need to have the correct undercoating. They don't need to have. So do you walk them through like, what is it that you really want to kind of gauge that first initial price?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We really try to dial them down on what they're looking for because there's a huge difference. When we're going to do a car for Pebble Beach, then that's no holds barred. The standard is so high when you're going to Pebble or Quail or any of those big shows. You saw the cars at Moda, and I don't know if you went up to Amelia Island. We went up to
I
Amelia
did.
next
Yeah.
weekend, and oh my gosh, there was some cars there that were just incredible, beautiful
Yeah.
540K, that dark brown one that was a stunning piece of work. I talked to the restorers on that. So yeah, there's a big difference between those things. And we do that for people. Well, somebody will do a car in their garage and they'll bring us the thing in pieces and we'll paint it for them. Like we've done that. We're doing that with a truck right now. The guy, took it apart. He did the body work and he did a nice job. He really did. But we primed it and did some finish work and then painted it. And then we give it back to him in pieces and let him put it together. We're really flexible on what we'll do. We're not just you got to do it our way or the highway. We try to accommodate people at different price levels. But I will tell you, projects escalate. They might bring it in for just a little something, and then when they see how good our guys are, This just happened with a Camaro. The guy brought it in, he just wanted a little rust repair. And when we discovered how messed up the car was and showed him how to fix it, and then he let us fix it correctly, now he's like, oh, the guys I was using are a bunch of idiots. And I want you guys to finish the car. So now we're doing the paint and putting everything else back together. So that does
It is
happen.
really a slippery slope, right? You know, you get a nice bare metal repaint, and then you're like, wow, now the interior, I thought it looked new, now it looks really kind of dingy. So you want to get the interior
Right,
done or whatever. So,
right.
well, and let's get back to Pebble Beach here a little bit. It's very strategic in trying to show a car at Pebble Beach, right? You know this. You know, if you do have a 540K Mercedes and won last year, you probably don't want to pursue it, you know, for the next year, you know, or you know, if you have a class that's specializing in X, you know, a designer's featured, well, maybe you want to, you know, people very strategic, you know, they want to look out, you know, 7 years in advance. Not that they know what the classes will be, but they want to plan out every year to have something that they can compete with. Have you had a conversation where you know, you've had to tell them, you know what, this isn't going to be a Pebble Beach car. You know, it might get on the lawn, but it's not in any hope of winning anything.
We've had those conversations, but most of the time, we haven't done a lot of the big 30s cars for Pebble Beach. We've done our business has been more cars from the late 50s through the now kind of 80s. But
Yep.
we've done four Ferrari 250 PF cabriolets. We restored four of those in a row. And none of them got to Pebble, though we worked on a car that did a long wheelbase Cal Spider that got shown at Pebble. And we bought a car in 2014. I found an Arnold Bristol, and one of my customers had been wanting to go to Pebble. And I said, this was an old race car. Why don't you buy it from me? We'll see if Pebble's interested and put it together. Well, he thought that was great. So we did it. We did a little deal on it. And basically, I just sold him the car for pretty much what I paid for it. And then he had us restore it. And this car was raced in SCCA. It was a 1954 Arnold Bristol, which was a very special little car. And the history of those is kind of long, but the long and short of it is we had a short window. We got the car purchased in January. He made this decision in February, got a hold of Pebble. They tentatively would accept it, and we started working on it. So we had from February till July to do a complete frame up restoration. And we put that car on the lawn at Pebble Beach, and it was amazing. We had to have an engine made for it in England and shipped over in that time period.
Wow.
It
Holy
was
cow.
nuts. We had a massive amount of metal work to do. And so it was basically in 5.5 months we restored that car. We had a team of 8 guys working pretty much 7 days a week till late at night. And I worked on it a lot myself, my managers, we were all sanding, painting, and man, it was wild. Tons of fun. And we
So,
showed it and
yeah.
we were kind of
That,
like fourth place.
yeah. But still, you're on the line, you know,
Oh
that
yeah, it
whole
was great. And
experience.
we went on the drive, we went on that great drive down Highway 1 and it was
Yeah.
such a blast.
Well, from a restorer's perspective, what do you think about the preservation car winning last year, the 1934 Bugatti Type 59 Sport? What are your thoughts on that? Because it did have a repaint way back in the day. Any thoughts on that as the winning car?
That's a tough one. I love the fact that it won. I love the preservation cars. I've always loved that. We work on preservation cars a lot. We just had a car come in recently with all original paint. We do paint correction on them and all kinds of stuff and bring them back to life without, doing paint work and so forth, hopefully. But it's a real disappointment for the people that have spent a million or, so dollars on a car to compete and then have something win that, got a repaint, may not be totally original. I don't, what do you think of that? You've
I love the
been
fact
involved.
a preservation car won. I don't know about, you know, it having a repaint kind of bothers me a little bit, but you know, it's such a historic car.
Yeah,
You know, it's almost like, where do you draw the line? I mean, it's not like the repaint was last week. I mean, it was decades ago, you know?
right.
And so I do love the fact they're recognizing a preservation car. Um, I just wish it didn't have the repaint, I guess, where it was, no zero questions asked or zero, had the original patina from the factory, I guess is what I wish it had. But I do love the fact that a preservation car was picked. So,
Yes, it was amazing, and the car was amazing. So there
so let
is
me ask you
that.
this: if there's someone listening right now that needs to get a car restored, now they don't necessarily live in Colorado. When they're shopping for a restoration shop, what kind of advice would you give them?
Really look carefully into the shop. See how long they've been around. Check online for reviews. Make sure they haven't been sued 50 times. Dig deep because we work on cars where I just hear horror stories. We restored a Ferrari for a guy that he paid his shop 650,000. They had his car 6 years and it wasn't even a roller when they got it to that
Mm,
point. And it had to be taken out by the sheriff. And this company had deceived other people and been in a bunch of lawsuits. He could have found out with a Google search, but he didn't. He just trusted him. So, this is what you run into in restoration. You've just got to check. There are great shops out there, reputable shops. So you've got to do your homework before you just sign up on the dotted line. And it's also good to go there. You're going to spend what, 100, 250,000. Get on a plane, go see the shop, go meet the people, go look at the projects, call some of their customers and see what it's really all about. That's what I'd recommend.
yeah, that's great advice because once the car is disassembled in the shop, you're
Oh
at their
boy,
mercy, right?
you really, I know
Yeah,
you've heard those stories. I know you have.
yeah. One of my favorite, I like sports car market quite a bit. And I know John Tranius, who's been on this podcast before, the legal files, he's been writing
Yeah,
a lot about some that have crawled their way through the courts and, have come to some sort of conclusion. And sometimes it's like, I just can't get the car out, or the place went out of business or whatever. So, yeah, you really have to be careful. And I always tell people, go look, when you're at a car show and you see a car that's been restored and you like the restoration work, ask the owner who did it,
right.
that's a great way to find, someone that maybe isn't on everyone else's radar, could be just, a small shop that's just getting started that's doing some great work. So,
I've seen that. Some of these smaller shops are like that. They're fabulous and nobody knows about them yet. And we were like that for a long time. Nobody knew about us until we, finished our first big Ferrari and took it to Cavallino and kicked butt on somebody like, you know, the biggest shops in the country.
right.
We
Yeah.
won best in class and we weren't expected to. So we got a lot of dirty looks at first, but who are these guys from Englewood, Colorado coming in here? And, you know,
Right. Right.
it
Well,
was
let's close with
fun.
something fun here. What was your first car? Oh, three questions. Your first car, your dream car, and your current fun car.
Oh man, my first car, my father owned a Chrysler dealership. So when I grew up, I was around a lot of cars. My very first car was a Simca. It was a little
Wow,
French
Simca.
car. Yeah, it was this cool little $1,800 car that was a lot of fun to drive. And boy, as far as a dream car, if I could just go out and grab one tomorrow, I'd probably get a Ferrari, a short wheelbase Berlinetta. I absolutely love
Oh,
those cars, that little 250 Berlinetta. And I think they made 50 of them or something, or 100, not very many, but they're just spectacular. I sold one to a guy. I found one for him. It was only 9.7 million. So I need to save up.
I have yet to drive one of those. I was fortunate when I represented the Ferrari GTO to drive a GTO, which was
Oh
that's my
man.
favorite at this
Yeah.
point until I drive a short wheelbase. All right, so that's your dream car, right? So what's your fun daily? Do you have a fun car in the garage you'd like to take out on weekends?
I'm driving I have BMW X5s that we have a bunch of those, and I have a Tesla that I drive quite a bit. And I have 6 motorcycles. So when I'm going for fun, I have some really fast motorcycles that I get on and drive. And I'm building a 67 XKE Roadster. And that
Oh, there we
car's
go.
just
XKE.
ready for
Okay.
paint. Yeah. I
Yeah.
had two of them when I was growing up. I had one in high school and when I was a senior, and then one right after that. And I always loved those cars. So I found one in Colorado from an original owner who bought it new in Denver in '67. And so we're restoring it. We're just now talking about the paint. In fact, I was talking to Roger about that, asking him what's the best, resale color for those cars? Because it was originally dark green with a green interior, and I don't think that's the best, color in
Right.
the long run.
Right. Right. Wow.
I'm thinking
What?
medium blue with red.
Oh, that's a great. Europeans could do that blue and red.
Yeah.
U.S. automakers really couldn't. So, awesome, Jack. Well, thanks for being on the Collector Car Podcast. What's the best way for my listeners to learn more about you and your restoration shop?
Really, farlandcars.com. And we're just pull up the website. We've got probably over 130 cars in our completed projects section of that website, and it links to our sales. We have cars for sale there. We have interesting cars in the showroom at all times. So just pop it up on the website, and there you go. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and all the usual places, but Farland Cars will get you started.
Awesome, Jack. Well, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, great to talk to you.
Rolled in on a flatbed, wheels hanging low, dust-covered dreams from decades ago. Chrome all fade, paint long gone, but under that rust was a heart holding on. They said she's a basket case, but I saw more, a whisper of a man's and old concours lore. So I left her with the masters, wrenches in hand, in a shop where legends are born from the sand. Now she's a showstopper, center stage glow, Pebble Beach shine with that old school soul. Frame off magic, panel gap tight, every bolt torque just right by the midnight light. It takes more than money, it takes heart and pride to bring steel and soul back to life. Craftsmen with calipers, stitching the seams, matching the leather to long-lost dreams. Hammering dolly bare metal finesse, chasing perfection with every process. Engine torn down, blueprinted with care, so she roars like the devil with class and flair. No shortcuts taken, no detail ignored, just blood, sweat, and torque in that old Ford. She's a showstopper, concours queen. Judges lean close just to see what they mean. Mirror beneath her, reflections don't lie. They see decades of skill in a single headlight. It's more than repair, it's resurrection. It's craft, it's art, it's pure connection. English wheel curves to paint laid deep, to old school tricks they still swear to keep. Every touch, every thread, every chrome line is a tribute to time and the hands that define. She's a showstopper, best in class, from a barn to the lawn with a touch of badass. Trophy in hand, but it's more than that. It's the soul of the builder under every badge. 'Cause winning ain't luck, it's years of lore in that little shop behind the corrugated door. So here's to the ones with the patience and grit, who take broken dreams and recommit restoring more than just steel and chrome. They bring the past back home.